Before we begin, take a moment to remember what you were taught about American history. The speeches, the victories, the moments meant to inspire pride. But tonight, we're not revisiting the stories that appear in textbooks. We're going to explore the parts that were quietly left out, the experiments that were never explained, the decisions made in fear and paid for by ordinary people. These are not myths. They are not rumors. They are documented events, buried in archives, photographs, and forgotten reports. Some lasted years, others lasted decades, and many are still shaping the country today in ways most people never realize. During the early months of World War II, fear spread rapidly across the United States. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, suspicion turned toward an entire community. In 1942, Executive Order 9066 was signed. It allowed the forced relocation of Japanese Americans living along the West Coast. Families were given little warning. They sold homes, businesses, and possessions for almost nothing. Entire lives were packed into a single suitcase. Most of the people sent to these camps were American citizens. No trials were held. No evidence was required. Barbed wire surrounded the camps. Guards stood watch. Years later, the government officially apologized. But for many families, what was lost could never be recovered. In 1932, a medical study began in Alabama. It would quietly continue for 40 years. Hundreds of black men were told they were receiving treatment for bad blood. In reality, they were being observed as syphilis slowly destroyed their bodies. Even after penicillin became widely available, treatment was withheld. Doctors watched, notes were taken. Some men went blind, some died. Families were never told the truth. The experiment ended only after it was exposed to journalists. Trust in medical institutions was permanently damaged. In 1900, it is estimated that nearly 2 million children under the age of 16 were employed in the United States. Some were as young as 6. Work-related injuries were common and rarely documented. There were no safety regulations, no protective equipment. When accidents occurred, children were often dismissed without compensation. Another child would quickly take their place. Illness was also widespread. Poor ventilation and long hours weakened immune systems. Tuberculosis and respiratory diseases spread easily through crowded workplaces. Many children grew up malnourished, exhausted, and permanently injured. Public awareness of child labor grew slowly. One of the most influential figures in exposing these conditions was photographer Lewis Hine. Armed with a camera and a notebook, Hine traveled across the country documenting child labor wherever he found it. His photographs captured children standing on factory floors, working night shifts, and carrying tools larger than their bodies. He recorded their names, ages, and working hours. These images shocked the public. For the first time, Americans could see what had previously been hidden behind factory walls. Reformers and activists used these photographs to push for change. Organizations like the National Child Labor Committee argued that children deserved education, safety, and time to grow. Resistance was strong. Many business owners claimed child labor was necessary for economic survival. Some argued that work built character. Progress came slowly. In 1916, the Keating-Owen Act attempted to restrict child labor at the federal level. The Supreme Court later ruled it unconstitutional. It would take years of continued pressure before meaningful reform arrived. The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 finally established nationwide limits on child labor. It set minimum ages and restricted working hours. By then, generations of children had already paid the price. Even after laws changed, child labor did not disappear overnight. In rural areas and informal industries, children continued to work. The legacy of this era remains visible in the photographs, records, and memories that survive. Today, these images serve as quiet reminders of a time when childhood was shaped by necessity rather than choice. They remind us that progress often comes slowly and at great human cost. As the machines of the industrial age grew larger and faster, it was often the smallest workers who bore the heaviest burden. In the early afternoon of March 25, 1911, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory was busy with its usual rhythm. Located on the upper floors of the Ash Building in New York City, the factory produced women's blouses known as shirtwaists. Rows of sewing machines filled the space. Most of the workers were young immigrant women, many in their teens or early 20s. The workday was nearly over. Shortly before closing time, a fire broke out on the 8th floor. It likely started from a discarded cigarette igniting a pile of fabric scraps beneath a cutting table. The flames spread quickly. The factory was filled with highly flammable materials, cotton fabric, paper patterns, and wooden furniture. Within minutes, smoke and heat filled the room. Workers rushed toward the exits. One of the stairwell doors was locked. Factory owners had locked certain doors to prevent theft and unauthorized breaks. That decision would prove fatal. As panic spread, workers tried to escape through the remaining exits. The single fire escape quickly became overcrowded and collapsed under the weight. Some workers attempted to use the elevators. Others climbed onto window ledges, desperate for air. Outside, pedestrians looked up to see figures trapped against the smoke-filled windows. With no way out, some workers jumped. Firefighters arrived quickly, but their ladders could reach only as high as the 6th floor. Safety nets were stretched below, but the falling bodies tore through them. The fire was over in less than 30 minutes. By the time it ended, 146 people were dead. Most victims died from smoke inhalation or burns. Others died from the impact of their falls. The tragedy shocked the nation. Newspapers published detailed accounts and photographs. Crowds gathered to mourn. Funeral processions filled the streets of New York. Public attention turned toward factory safety. Investigations revealed that the Triangle factory had passed previous inspections despite dangerous conditions. There were no automatic sprinklers. Exit routes were inadequate. Emergency planning was non-existent. The factory owners were charged with manslaughter but later acquitted. Still, the outrage sparked change. Labor unions, reformers, and lawmakers pushed for stronger workplace regulations. New York State formed a factory investigating commission. Over the following years, dozens of new safety laws were enacted. These laws addressed fire safety, building access, working hours, and child labor. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire became a turning point in American labor history. It demonstrated in the most visible way the human cost of unchecked industrial practices. Today, the Ash Building still stands. It has been renamed the Brown Building and designated a National Historic Landmark. Each year, memorials are held to remember those who lost their lives. Their names are read aloud. Flowers are placed. The windows are illuminated. The fire itself lasted only a short time. Its impact continues more than a century later. For much of American history, there was a quiet system most people never learned about in school. Beginning in the late 1800s, Native American children were taken from their families and sent to boarding schools, often hundreds of miles away. The goal was simple and brutal: erase who they were. Government officials believed Native culture needed to be fixed. Their motto said it all: kill the Indian, save the man. Kids arrived speaking their own languages, wearing traditional clothing, and carrying stories from home. Within days, their hair was cut, their clothes were burned, their names were replaced with English ones. Speaking their native language could get them punished, sometimes beaten, sometimes locked away. School life was strict, military-style rules, hard labor, long hours. Many kids were forced to clean, farm, or sew instead of learning to read. Food was limited. Homesickness hit hard. Some kids tried to run away. A lot didn't make it back. Disease spread fast in crowded dorms: tuberculosis, influenza, measles. Thousands of children died while enrolled in these schools. Many were buried in unmarked graves. For decades, this was brushed off as education, but families knew better. The damage didn't just stop with one generation. It hit language, identity, and trust, and those effects are still felt today. Only recently has the U.S. government started to openly admit what happened. For a long time, this part of history stayed low-key, out of textbooks, out of classrooms, but not out of memory.